Touch her the right way, and she won't forget you for the rest of her life. She'll feel something deep, something primal, something she didn't even know she needed. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Because deep down, you've felt that shift in her energy, when your touch speaks louder than your words. That's why I put together the Stoic Relationship Blueprint for Men, the most powerful relationship ebook ever created for men, grounded in 2,000+ years of unshakable Stoic wisdom. The link's in the comments. Grab it now before it's gone. This won't be available for long. What I'm about to share with you in this video matters more than ever, because in a world where most men touch to get something, very few understand what it means to touch with presence, with purpose, with power. You're about to discover the 5 places on a woman's body where your touch speaks louder than anything you could say. Number 1. Her lower back. Her lower back holds more than nerves and vertebrae. It holds ancient memory, instinctual trust, and deeply embedded codes of masculine presence that modern men have forgotten and women still subconsciously crave. Because when you walk behind her and place your hand there with quiet confidence, not seeking a response but anchoring the moment, her body tells her mind, this man leads, this man moves with direction, this man is safe, not because he says so, but because she feels so. And this is not about seduction as much as it is about primal memory encoded over generations, where masculine energy guided, protected, and provided not just things but certainty. And when you extend your hand to her lower back, you're not initiating a touch, but initiating a reminder that she is with a man who knows exactly who he is, where he's going, and why he has chosen her to walk beside him. And in that exact moment, without words or gestures, she begins to relax into a state that most women today are starved of: feminine softness in the presence of grounded masculine clarity. And you don't get there by faking dominance or trying to be someone you're not. You arrive there by subtracting everything that is not you, because that is what Stoic wisdom has taught for thousands of years. Not to accumulate false strength, but to remove weakness. Not to seek control, but to embody order within. And when you touch a woman's lower back as a man who has nothing to prove, no outcome to chase, and no validation to beg for, she feels the absence of chaos in you, and that becomes the very space where her chaos finally settles. Because when you can move with calm, with silence in your body and decision in your hand, when she feels the full weight of your presence distilled in that small touch, it becomes the most seductive sentence ever spoken without a word. And this is why you must become the kind of man whose energy tells the truth before his mouth ever opens. Not through pretending or manipulating, but through becoming the kind of person who has done the internal work to no longer be shaken by rejection, praise, or external conditions. And you do that by mastering your mornings, by disciplining your desires, by building strength in the gym, stillness in your thoughts, and precision in your communication, not for her, but for you. Because only then will she trust the hand on her back, not just because it feels good, but because it feels certain. And in this world of shallow compliments, empty promises, and loud boys trying to pretend they are men, a woman instantly notices the man who doesn't need to prove he is one. And if you've ever been with a woman who melted at your touch in public, who leaned into you even in silence, who smiled because she felt safe in your presence, then you already know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, then this is your wake-up call. Not to chase her, but to become the man who never needed to. And if you ever wondered why some men seem to have this quiet effect on women, why they never raise their voice, never need to flex, and yet women lean into them, it's because they walk in alignment with purpose, and purpose always precedes power. So you must ask yourself, do I lead my own life, or do I follow approval, trends, and weakness? Because if you want her to feel something when you place your hand on her lower back, you need to start by commanding respect from yourself first. Not in arrogance, but in self-respect. And when your life is structured, your thoughts are clean, your habits are aligned, your finances disciplined, and your mission clear, she won't just follow your touch, she will surrender to your presence. And this is not about domination, but orientation, about giving her a signal that she can rest from her overthinking, her fear, her hyper-independence. Because a woman in today's world is strong because she has to be, but still longs for the man who gives her permission to be soft again. And when you touch her lower back with that rare combination of calm certainty and subtle leadership, her biology opens to you, her emotions flow toward you, and her loyalty becomes natural, not forced. And you won't have to convince her because she'll convince herself. And the only thing standing between the man you are today and the man she longs for is the discipline to live your truth unapologetically, to embody every principle you preach, and to train your mind as hard as you train your body, because in the end, the touch is not the move. The touch is the result of who you've become, and who you've become is not defined by your possessions, your appearance, or even your words, but by your consistency, your integrity, and your internal structure. Because when a woman meets a man who has spent more time in solitude with his thoughts than chasing fleeting validation, who knows how to sit with discomfort without reaching for distraction, who can make decisions rooted in values instead of emotions, she relaxes not because of what he says, but because of what he doesn't need to say. And you don't reach that point by memorizing strategies, but by living as though every action carves your character in stone, by waking early when you don't want to, by pushing weights when you'd rather rest, by showing restraint when others explode, because every quiet decision you make to control your world is a signal to her nervous system that you can also handle hers. And that's why your touch speaks volumes. It carries your story, your self-respect, your devotion to truth. And if you want her to respond to you on a level deeper than attraction, where her loyalty isn't conditional, her trust isn't temporary, and her love isn't strategic, then your life must reflect a man whose values are non-negotiable, whose time is sacred, whose habits are aligned with purpose, and whose very presence reminds her of the man she used to only dream existed. Number 2. Her wrist. The wrist is not just a limb, it's a pulse point, a truth detector, a reflection of how present you are in any given moment. And when you hold a woman's wrist with intention, not to control but to connect, you're offering her more than physical contact. You're showing her what it feels like to be chosen by a man who is fully there, who is grounded in purpose and clear in action, because when she feels your thumb lightly pressing into that soft inner place beneath her palm, she doesn't just sense you showing affection, she feels the entire weight of your emotional discipline in that one gesture. And the men who understand this don't grab, they guide, not with force, but with calm, directional presence, the kind that radiates from a man who's spent years building strength where no one could see, who has forged a backbone through countless uncelebrated acts of responsibility, resilience, and truth. And it's in that grip, not too tight, never loose, that she senses the difference between a man who touches to take and a man who touches because he's already full. And the wrist becomes the place where her guard lowers without warning, because she's not reacting to a move. She's responding to a message written in your nervous system and felt in her core. And in a world flooded with noise, chaos, and superficiality, the moment you reach for her wrist with the same presence you'd give to something sacred, she will feel what she has been silently searching for. A man who sees without staring, who listens without interrupting, who touches without needing permission, because his intent is pure and his self-command is unquestionable. And this becomes the access point to a deeper emotional trust, the one that doesn't require her to explain herself or ask for security, because she feels it in the way you respond to her energy with clarity instead of confusion, in the way you honor her space while still making her feel desired. And this balance is rare but not impossible. It's simply the product of a man who has gone inward and faced the fire of accountability, who has learned not just to build muscle, but to build patience, to manage time as a sacred asset, to handle his finances not for vanity but for legacy, and who has chosen to sharpen his words, his thoughts, and his intentions like a blade meant to protect, not harm. And when this kind of man reaches for a woman's wrist during a moment of shared laughter, or while crossing a street, or during a deep late-night conversation, that touch doesn't just feel good, it feels unforgettable, and it speaks to a level of presence that most women have only imagined, a presence that reminds her that she is in the company of a man who needs no affirmation to validate his worth, and in this space, her trust begins to flow freely, because she knows that if your touch is this thoughtful, your leadership must be even more powerful, and every time you reach for her wrist, whether in stillness or motion, you are teaching her how to recognize a man who leads from within, who acts with integrity in the unseen moments, who tells the truth not just with words, but with every choice he makes. And the wrist becomes more than skin. It becomes a signal that she has found someone rare, someone who is not afraid to feel deeply, love wisely, and lead gently. And if you wonder how this becomes your reality, it starts by living like the man you wish to be remembered as, by waking up and making the bed even when no one will see it, by saying no to distractions that derail your mission, by keeping promises to yourself with brutal consistency, and by knowing that every habit, every sacrifice, every boundary you protect is forging a masculine presence that is undeniable. And when that kind of energy flows through your touch, especially in moments that aren't sexual but intimate, not loud but meaningful, she will begin to trust you in ways that most men never earn. And you don't need to talk about being a high-value man, because your life already proves it. And you don't have to argue with her to gain respect, because your discipline commands it. And when she reaches back for your hand without hesitation, wraps her fingers around yours, or leans her head slightly closer as you hold her wrist just long enough for her to feel seen, but not caged, she won't just be showing affection. She'll be showing submission to something she hasn't found before: your leadership, your clarity, your calm, and your commitment to truth. And the way to become this kind of man is to stop outsourcing your self-worth to anyone, to stop delaying your development until someone sees potential in you, and to start living like your future family depends on your strength now, because it does. And when you lead yourself first, your presence will lead. Her, and your touch will no longer be about affection. It will be about anchoring her to a life where she can finally rest, not because she's weak, but because she's tired of being strong for everyone else. And when your hand meets her wrist again, she'll know she's safe, not because you said it, but because everything about you lives it. Number 3, her hair. When you touch her hair, you're not just making contact with a part of her body, you're accessing a deeply emotional trigger that bypasses logic and speaks to the part of her that yearns for nurturing masculine attention. And this is not about being romantic in the way most men have been taught to act. It's about being deeply aware of how every small, intentional movement of your hand communicates the kind of man you are. And if you can't touch her hair with awareness, presence, and restraint, then you're not ready to touch her at all, because hair is symbolic to a woman in ways men rarely understand. It's the crown she carries, the veil she hides behind, the part of her that has been pulled, complimented, tangled in passion, and tied in rituals of self-care since she was a child. And when you touch her hair slowly, deliberately, without rush or agenda, you're sending her body a message that says you can slow the chaos without removing her fire, that you know how to be gentle with strength and not lose your edge. And this kind of touch doesn't come from a script or a tactic. It comes from a man who has learned to be still in his own body first, who has made peace with his own mess, who has built a home within himself, so that when she enters his space she doesn't feel pressure, she feels peace. And there's something uniquely powerful about a man who can sit with a woman, cradle the back of her head, run his fingers gently through her strands while she speaks, not interrupting, not fixing, not calculating, but just being with her in that moment with full awareness. And the men who do this well aren't trying to prove anything. They're just expressing what it feels like to live aligned, because her hair becomes the place she remembers what it feels like to be cherished without being captured, adored without being analyzed. And if you've ever had a woman close her eyes while you combed your hand through her hair, if you've ever noticed her lean into your chest afterward without you asking for anything, you've felt what that kind of touch can unlock. Trust, softness, safety, and desire. Not because you demanded it, but because you created the conditions where it naturally emerged. And this is where so many men go wrong, thinking connection is built through effort when it's built through essence, through how you carry yourself when no one is watching, how you react when things don't go your way, how you discipline your mind and your body so that when you are with her you aren't distracted, fidgeting or elsewhere. You are here, fully here, and in that presence, you give her permission to drop the armor she's been wearing all day, because in that hair-touching moment, she is no longer the boss, the sister, the daughter, the girl navigating a world that demands she stay hard. She becomes just a woman in the presence of a man who can hold her emotionally without tightening his grip. And to become that kind of man, you need to start with your mornings. Build discipline not to impress her, but to train yourself. Set boundaries not to control others, but to protect your time and energy. Speak truth even when your voice shakes. And remember that every action you take either builds or destroys the version of you that she can trust with her vulnerability. And if you can make your touch communicate who you are, grounded, intentional, steady, then every time your hand meets her hair, she'll remember why she's with you. Because it won't be about the surface. It will be about the stability you radiate, the emotional depth you embody, and the fact that when you're with her, you make her feel like the most beautiful woman alive, not with compliments, but with consistency. And that kind of consistency comes from living by a personal code, from knowing who you are when the world tries to tell you otherwise, from standing firm in your mission and living each day with clarity, so that when she is near you, she doesn't need to question your direction. She feels it in your touch, your tone, and your timing. And the greatest mistake you can make is to think that these small gestures don't matter, because a woman will remember the way you touched her hair long after she's forgotten your words. And if you want to be the kind of man who leaves a legacy in her life, not just a moment, then practice touching her in ways that say, "I see you, I respect you, and I choose you," without ever needing to say those words, because a truly grounded man doesn't need to talk himself up. His energy, his eye contact, and yes, even the way he touches her hair does all the talking for him. Number 4, her hips. Touching her hips is not about claiming space, but about communicating stability and strength in a way that she can feel without needing to rationalize, because her hips are not just a sensual zone, they are the foundation of her feminine body and an emotional gateway into the way she reads your confidence, your control, and your clarity. And when you place your hands there, whether you're guiding her to you, holding her in a moment of stillness, or simply pulling her into a dance that she didn't see coming, you're not initiating a moment of attraction. You're establishing a rhythm of trust, because the hips carry more than motion. They carry history, energy, tension, and memory. And a woman can instantly sense the kind of man you are based on how you treat this space. And if your touch is hesitant, overly eager, or disconnected from her emotional rhythm, she will feel it instantly and pull away, not physically, but emotionally. And yet, when your grip is present, grounded, and clear, she will lean in, not because you forced a reaction, but because you created the conditions where her body felt the freedom to respond. And to earn that response, You must live like a man who has cultivated depth, who has built a reputation with himself, who has laid down a foundation of personal responsibility so solid that when he touches a woman's hips, it feels like she's being anchored, not handled, because most men want to impress her, but few men are able to impress themselves first. And that's the difference. That's the invisible energy she detects when your hands slide around her waist during an embrace, when she's cooking in the kitchen and you approach from behind without words, when she's facing a crowd and you pull her closer by the hips to whisper something only she can hear. Those are the moments that define connection, not because of the gesture, but because of who is behind the gesture. And if you want her to respond with desire and not just obligation, you must become the man whose energy is steady, whose body speaks congruence, whose life reflects the very principles you expect her to respect. And that means you must audit your own movement. Do you walk with purpose, or do you shuffle through distraction? Do you speak with clarity, or do you drown in opinion? Do you rest with intention, or do you numb with habits? Because the man who leads from the hips is also the man who knows how to protect what he holds. And when you treat a woman's hips as sacred, not in ritual but in reverence, you allow her to drop the armor she carries from all the false leaders before you. And in that moment, she will know she is with someone who doesn't just see her, but understands her, who doesn't just reach for her, but reveres her presence. And she'll feel it in the way your hands rest, not grope on her, in the way your fingers don't rush to move, but simply remain. And when you live by a code where every gesture you make reflects self-control, she'll begin to surrender to your touch because she trusts your leadership, not because she's weak, but because she's tired of being the only one holding both roles. And that's the essence of polarity, not domination or submission, but mutual relief, mutual return, and mutual truth. And to live this truth, you must take full command of your values. Get clear about your mission, strip away the lies you've believed about yourself, confront your past without shame, and move forward with clean decisions. And remember that if you want to be the man whose touch can still her world with one subtle hold around her hips, then you must become the kind of man whose world is already in order, whose discipline is non-negotiable, whose standards are so deeply ingrained that when he reaches for her it doesn't feel like a question, it feels like a direction she's been waiting for. And that's why women don't remember every man who touched them, but they never forget the one who made them feel safe to be fully feminine again. And that safety doesn't come from what you say, it comes from how you live, how you show up when no one's watching, how you honor your word when it would be easier to fold, and how you treat your own life as something worth protecting. Because if you can't lead your own life with clarity and conviction, you have no business touching a woman's hips and expecting her to follow your lead. And this is why ancient wisdom tells us that the man who conquers others is strong, but the man who conquers himself is mighty, because the touch she craves is not about strength alone. It's about direction, maturity, and a calm, composed ability to lead her back to herself by being so deeply anchored in who you are that she never needs to question where she stands with you. And if you want to be that man, begin now with the smallest daily disciplines, with a renewed devotion to becoming the kind of man whose hands speak security, whose posture speaks leadership, and whose touch, especially around her hips, tells her one timeless truth: you are safe, you are seen, and you are finally home. Number 5. Behind her neck. Behind her neck is not just an intimate place, it is a zone of primal vulnerability, a spot she instinctively guards because it sits at the intersection between emotional surrender and physical presence. And when a man places his hand there with deep awareness, without urgency or insecurity, he's not just initiating closeness, he's establishing a profound sense of emotional grounding, because this area speaks directly to her body's internal recognition of whether the man she's with is worth trust. And it has nothing to do with size or appearance, but everything to do with energy, with intention, with the unshakable presence that flows from a man who knows who he is and where he's going. And when you reach for that part of her neck at the right time, perhaps when you're pulling her close in a quiet room, or when you're guiding her head to your shoulder as she exhales the weight of a long day, or even during a soft kiss under low light, you are not just touching her, you are giving her nervous system a direct signal that she is safe to let go, to rest, to soften, and in a world that constantly demands she be sharp, alert, and protective, a man who knows how to touch her here becomes unforgettable, not because he impressed her with words, but because he reconnected her with the part of herself she longs to experience in peace. The woman who can trust the man beside her, and the way to cultivate this kind of presence is not through manipulation or technique, but through character, through daily choices to act with integrity, to reject the easy route in favor of the right one, to speak with clarity instead of compromise. And when you do this consistently, your very body begins to carry a language that needs no translation. And she feels this in the way your palm rests just below her hairline, not possessively, not casually, but as a quiet anchor. And in that moment, she doesn't pull away, because her body has decided something her mind may have not yet caught up to. She's with a man who has already conquered himself. And if you've ever touched a woman here and seen her exhale deeply, tilt her head forward, or lean her back into you as if your presence was the only gravity that mattered, then you know what this kind of grounding creates. It creates emotional resonance so deep that no compliment, no gift, no extravagant gesture could replace it. And if you haven't yet experienced that, know that the only path to it begins with a hard look at how you show up when no one is watching, how you train yourself to show restraint when it would be easy to indulge, how you build routines and hold promises that no one applauds, but that slowly turn you into the kind of man who moves with grace under pressure. And that grace is exactly what she feels when your hand rests at the base of her neck, because she's not measuring your success, your status, or your car. She's measuring your consistency, your calm, your ability to lead without fear or apology. And the Stoics taught that external things are never the source of peace, that peace must be cultivated within. And a man who brings peace to a woman's nervous system has first learned to command it in his own. And that's why this touch is so powerful, because it's not the movement that matters, it's the man who moves. And when you've become someone who can carry the storms of life with clarity, who doesn't collapse when tested, who leads with silence, not out of emptiness, but because there is nothing left to prove, she will feel it in every inch of that touch. And over time, she'll begin to associate you with home, not because you tried to be everything she wanted, but because you became everything you said you'd be. And this consistency rewires how she experiences love. It shifts how she responds to masculine energy, and it teaches her that vulnerability doesn't have to be earned through pain, but can be invited through presence. And if you want to live as that kind of man, start with the spaces you ignore. What thoughts you let live rent-free in your mind, what habits you repeat when stressed, what beliefs you hold about love, power, and purpose, and slowly replace chaos with order, distraction with devotion, blame with responsibility, and before long, your life will begin to shape your presence. Your presence will shape your energy, and your energy will shape your touch. And when that happens, she won't just remember your hand behind her neck. She'll remember the way it made her feel like she could finally drop the weight she's been carrying her whole life, and rest in the arms of a man who actually knows what to do with it. And now you know, the power isn't just in where you touch her, it's in who you become before you ever do. But here's the truth most won't say out loud. Men today are starving. Starving for clarity in a world that constantly confuses them. Starving for strength when everything around them celebrates weakness. Starving for connection while silently carrying the weight of being unseen, misunderstood, and expected to never break. You've been told to tough it out, to figure it out alone. but it's costing you your peace, your confidence, and the very relationships you want to save or build. That's exactly why I created the Stoic Relationship Blueprint, the first and only guide that combines 2,000+ years of battle-tested Stoic wisdom with today's brutally real relationship dynamics. And for the first time ever, it's now available to the public, but not for long. We're capping the number of sales to just a few, because this knowledge deserves protection, not saturation. If you're serious about changing your life, if you're tired of guessing and ready to lead with clarity, then you need to grab this book now, not tomorrow. Comment the blueprint if you're ready, and click the link in the comments to get your copy while you still can. Transform your mindset, transform your relationships, transform everything,